Hello everybody and welcome here to our panel discussion this morning. My name is Joanne Cole and I am the CEO and founder of BrokerIQ, and we are delighted to be here today at Digital DNA to host a fabulous discussion, and thank you to Digital DNA for having us. This is BrokerIQ's launch week and we are a new customer engagement platform for the insurance and mortgage broker market. So our theme today is digitisation of the insurance industry and its impact specifically on the broker market. And we have a fantastic lineup of guests with us this morning. So we welcome them to the stage. First up, we have Ed Axon. Come on up and join us, Ed. How are you? Yeah, want you up, definitely. Ed
It's working? Yeah.
You're all good to go, all good to go. Ed is the Senior Vice President of Business Development at Trov Insurance, and he is no stranger to Digital DNA or to panel discussions. So we'll have a good session this morning,
Looking
Ed.
forward to
yourself.
it. Thanks for inviting me, Joanne.
You're very welcome. Thanks for coming today. Next up, we have Anthony Bowden. Anthony is the Managing Director of Dignity and Grant Insurance Brokers and Risk Advisors based in Uri, and one of the North's top commercial brokers. And Anthony has just recently, as part of Dignity and Grant, specialised in financial products specifically for the tech sector. So he's a great man to talk to if anybody's looking any
Thank you, Joanne.
insurance for their tech companies. And next up we have Aaron McElhinney. Aaron is the Managing Director and founder of Smart Mortgages in Derry, and he is also the founder of the new AMP Growth Incubator, which is one of the first in the Northwest. So welcome to the stage, Aaron, and your company is also launching this month, so good to have you here today, Aaron. Are you working?
No, I don't think it is.
Oh, there you are.
Sorry, thank you. Hello.
All good to go. So welcome everybody here this morning and welcome to our guests. We'll get started straight in. Lots to talk about, Ed. So first of all, we're just going to talk about what does digitisation of the insurance industry mean and how important is it to your respective businesses? So we'll go with yourself, Ed, to begin.
So I'll take it as a Trove perspective. So Trove's about 8 years old, and we started life as a B2C product actually, but what we quickly found is that a lot of the carrier partners that we had, a lot of them were in many ways encumbered by technology, legacy technology. And so digitalization is really taking the expertise that exists with carriers and actuaries and actually making a journey much easier for consumers to purchase insurance. So I think the overall feeling I have with it is if you want people to purchase insurance in today's generation, you have to really bring insurance to where they're living, where they're moving, where they're working, and bring it in a way that makes it really simple for them to purchase. So there's a growing gap with the generation of purchase of insurance, and that gap will get bigger if we don't make it easier and easier and easier for people to purchase insurance in a digital format.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially with the way things have changed, and we touch on this a wee bit later, but just with how instant life has become. So Anthony, what about yourself?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. I see the journey two ways. It's the customer journey, but also the broker journey. Digitisation for me is making life simpler for the client, ease of access to products, but then when it lands on the broker desk, the ability to pull that together and get out to market. There are a lot of good systems out there, but as insurers have got better with their systems, we doing more and more work. So for me, is trying to find that gap or plug that gap in the data fact find. But also then at the end of the journey is how you share documentation with clients. Mm-hmm. And I think, Joanne, you might have an answer for that.
Of course, BrokerIQ is definitely there for that customer journey at this stage, and that's what we have been, built our platform for. But yeah, some interesting points, and absolutely the whole process can be just difficult and challenging at times. So Aaron, what about yourself from a different perspective? Yeah,
it's slightly different for us, and I think what people are looking at is value. So the type of products that they're getting, is it covering the risks that they need? Is it right for them? Is it the right price? Because there's so many changes on the market. There have been so many different insurance companies that have pulled out for different things, for different reasons. And it's also about, I suppose, the customer journey, being able to get their documents, being able to interact when they want to be able to interact, being able to price it when they want to do it, when it suits them. So it's not just a 9 to 5, ringing a broker, it's doing it at night when you're at home and things like that. So it's about the platform, it's about how they integrate into it, and it's about, I suppose, just ease of use for clients.
Yeah, and I suppose the customer journey is such a big part, but there's so much more goes on in the background of that. But I suppose your end game is always that customer and how effortless it is for them. I suppose over the years, the broker market, it has been predicted that it would ride out these challenges, with all the new innovation that was coming with the new Insurtech companies like Trov and other companies that would be there. But I absolutely, that has been disproven. The broker market has never been as busy. Certainly, I speak to brokers every day of the week, and it's a tough market and it's busy. But what are the challenges you're facing at the moment, just Anthony, yourself within the market, and what would the priorities be, I suppose, moving forward?
Look, I've always seen the .com companies, the aggregators. I've always seen them as being a big threat to us. You're always worried, but as time has gone on, you realise that we do bring value to the whole process. If it's a multi-policy type client, so we talked earlier about hauliers. Building contractors, they're maybe carrying maybe 3, 4, maybe up on 10 policies at stages. Mm-hmm. That's very hard to do via an extranet site. It's very hard to do online. But what we've had to do as a business, we've had to bring other things to the stage or to the client. We've had to bring risk management. We've had to make risk management part of our day-to-day process. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the way forward. We've got to be relevant. We've got to stay relevant. I've read this morning that Amazon have partnered up with an Insurtech company.
Yeah.
There's always a threat, and we can't be naive and think it's not going to affect. It will affect us, but we have to make ourselves relevant to the client. Yeah. And I believe the risk management bit and how we can help clients is the answer to that. So.
Yeah, and certainly hearing that Amazon, I read that article and I knew it was in the pipeline. It just has come around very, very quickly that they've partnered with Superscript to be able to provide that instant for commercial sort of business insurance. Thanks, Anthony. What about yourself, Aaron?
I would agree. I think it's about adding value and really, looking at the issues that some of the clients have, and I suppose adding value to everything that we do. As brokers, I think people in Northern Ireland especially, they want face-to-face, they want advice, and I don't think that the aggregators really have done that for them. There's too many people that came and said, I thought I was insured, I wasn't insured. Really? And that's really, people want a face-to-face, or they want to be able to speak to somebody, whether that's digitally or face-to-face. So I really think that the brokers play a huge market, a place in the market. I don't think AI really has taken off in that space. I think people want advice, and I think that's why we'll be here for the long term.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons why, coming from the broker market, that BrokerIQ was formed, because I suppose see the need for the customer engagement, but also to give that customer the option that they want, whether they want it to be digital or a mix of both, but not to take away from the broker, because they are so vitally important. Ed, what about yourself? Do you see any challenges? I suppose specifically, we've talked a lot about the brokers and the broker industry moving forward, what the challenges would be.
Well, I see it, I suppose I see it slightly different. So I would divide the future up in two ways. I would look at, what does the role a broker will play in personal lines insurance versus commercial lines insurance. I see them very, very different. Personal lines insurance, somebody buying their car insurance once a year, can they do it direct? Yeah, of course they can. Might they still use a broker? Yes. However, if you look at commercial auto, business insurance, workers' compensation, liability cover, I think there's a massive role in the future for brokers to play, along with technology. As Aaron said, they have to get better. They have to be more relevant. But there's a big role to play in not just the transfer of risk, getting good pricing for your fleet of vans, but actually, how does a broker help me make my business better? How do we use proprietary data that the business will have, improve technology with speed, where does on-demand insurance, performance-based insurance come in? Those are the things I think brokers play a massive role in the future. So it won't stand still, but I think I would divide it between personal lines and commercial lines as being very different futures for insurance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose businesses is a lot of what we've been talking about at the moment for businesses that are on the go and out there, and our platform has been built for that as well, to help in that customer journey for the business and for large businesses as well, for the organisation of their data and data on the go. Ed, we'll just stay with you. This might be a wee bit controversial coming from the digital online platform like Trove, but do you feel, as predicted, that the new Insurtech companies are a threat to the broker market, or is there enough room as we move forward for everybody?
I think there's plenty of room. I mean, a lot of the Insurtechs came into the market, and we used to use words like disrupting the market, disrupting a 300-year-old industry that are incumbent by legacy technology. The reality is that's not true. And people like Trove never lose sight of the fact that, if a primary carrier wanted to build what Trove have, of course they could. Of course they could build it. They've got the intelligence. But I think the future is slightly different in that it's a more mature market, and everyone has a part to play, especially the relationship between brokers. If I think of the big global brokers like the Marshes of this world, they've all looked at how can they enhance their offering. How can they make themselves more relevant? And technology is one of those things. If I take a Trove example, we want to sit between, be the DNA between a carrier and the broker relationship. We want to provide a platform that uses proprietary data that allows the broker to embed insurance solutions into the journey of a customer, whether that's commercial lines auto, commercial lines buildings insurance, and that's the piece I think we all have to play. Yes, there are B2C Insurtechs around in specific markets, the Lemonades and the Roots of this world, who have all IPO'd in the US, and some have done better than others. But I think the broker world in commercial lines is very, very different, and if you think of a commercial auto product, ultimately what are we trying to do? We're all reading about the lack of lorry drivers around the world. How do you improve that with technology? How do insurance companies play a role in that? Well, there is ways now where performance-based insurance could start to make the business more efficient, and also allow lorry drivers to share in the benefit of fluctuating premiums. So improved premiums could be shared with lorry drivers. And I think the brokers and those relationships they have with those commercial fleets around the world play a massive role in adding value and ultimately making roads safer, and ultimately making the brokers' businesses or their customers' businesses more efficient. That, to me, is the future, not just transferring risk and looking for the best price of insurance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, for products like that, it is broker-led. It has to be broker-led. And you reminded me there, Ed, when you talked about disruption of the industry, of Rob Galbraith talks in his book about the future of insurance as we know it, about the victors of the world who turn up at conferences like this, and there's going to be no insurance. Broker is going to be safe, and the large legacy companies are going to be gone, and next year Victor is not there, because obviously we still need the likes of our brokers and our legacy companies to keep, and it's about forming that mix, I suppose, between the new and the old, and making room for everybody in the market. So just back to yourself, Anthony and Aaron, have you seen a change, I suppose, particularly with the pandemic, in the way customers want to buy insurance? With new generations coming forward, we've talked about Amazon, the Netflix, that kind of instant approach to everything in life. Do you see that the customer journey has changed in any way?
I'll go first, Aaron. Yeah, I have. Our doors have been closed for about 18 months, and we had one person demanding at the door yesterday that the door be open because everybody else in the street's open. So why aren't you open? So we're back to good old walking off the street again, and that's good. I like that. That's my personal touch. That's the business I like. But it's surprising how people did go down the line of email. I was told by my staff that no, only a few people have email addresses. And then whenever you started asking in March, April, May last year, everybody had an email address. Of course they did. You can't do anything without one. So people were happy to receive documentation that way. Our postage cost went way down. So people's way of doing things have changed. But there still is that wee bit of walking off the street that I like to see. So.
And I suppose it's about getting that good mix to cover. It's such a diverse space now. It's getting that mix that you can kind of have touch points for all of your customers to ensure that they're going to return, whether that's off the street or through an app or, you know, through email or text message or whatever it is. It's all of those instant lines of communication now. Yeah. What about yourself, Aaron?
Yeah, I have noticed probably in my world, I think we've probably jumped about 5 years. I think people really want they want to go so far in the journey, and then when they get so far, they basically want to speak. They want advice. Should I be doing this? Should I be doing something different? So they want control, and I think it's a different generation. I also think people, you know, want to talk via Zoom, Teams. You know, you literally I have to be able to communicate on every single platform available because people do things differently, and they want to do it in their time, and they also want to access the documents. They want document stores. They want everything has changed in terms of face-to-face. The amount of face-to-face stuff that I'm doing at the moment is very, very little. A lot of it is all online in people's time, on their own time. So yeah, I think the technology has, the pandemic has allowed the technology to grow faster than we ever could have imagined. And even for your BrokerIQ portal, having something where we can communicate with our clients on demand, and everybody has a smartphone now, everybody has embraced technology, and everybody wants to do things differently. I think, but you know, you people are walking on off the street. Our business is not really like that. It's all so digital. And I look forward to see what the future is going to bring, because I just think that's going to accelerate more, and apps like yours are going to make it even better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's about transparency, and there's a lot of talk about transparency in the market at the minute, and making, you know, everything more transparent for the customer, that it isn't, you know, a guessing game when it comes to a claim, you know, that you know what you have, and that then the liability doesn't fall back on the broker. Ed, what about yourself? What about the value that Trov add, I suppose, past the point of sale for that customer journey, that customer experience?
Well, I think it's not just Trov, but the technology itself. If you, you know, something that Aaron touched on, you have to be able to offer you know, quote to bind for whatever your journey is and whatever the customers, and that might be someone walking off the street, that might be more and more people digitally. You know, we live in a Netflix generation, and there is this gaping hole growing of younger people buying insurance or buying protection. If you think the traditional ways we all entered insurance, we'd buy our first car and get insurance, or we'd buy our first apartment and get insurance. That isn't happening. Globally, car sales are on the way down. You know, car share, ride share, that's the way people want to live. They want to live by subscription. You know, the average 20 years ago to buy a flat in London, the average deposit was around £14,000. It's now over 100,000. So young people aren't buying homes as much, and therefore the need for insurance becomes very different, or it has to change. And with that comes the need for the insurance companies to bring insurance to where they're living, bring insurance to how they're living, make it on demand, make it smartphone, you know, make it much easier to do not just quote and bind insurance, but actually make claims really simple. If we're going to make a claim, because young people now, especially with social media, that's the bit that they will tell their friends about. If it's really great experience, you know, the experience of buying insurance should be, of course it should be easy, but actually making a claim should be really simple as well. And to me, that's where the future of adding value, you know, beyond the purchase, is how can you make midterm adjustments. Trov's platform allows you to change address, add another article, add a car, add your friend onto your policy for the weekend. Stuff that traditionally was quite difficult to do. That's what people want to see, is how can I make it really easy. You know, the insurance industry, I've been only in it 5 years, and it's a bizarre industry to me, because if you think about historically what you would do, you would buy insurance, and then your insurance company would hope the hell they don't speak to you for a year, because typically that would be a claim. Actually, I think the more modern way of thinking is if I engage with my insurance company and it becomes part of a service and advice, and I think you talked about it earlier, you know, as a broker, how can I make the not just the purchase better, but the experience, whether I'm a commercial customer or a personal customer, you know, not be afraid to allow people to communicate. Now we have so many channels that we can communicate. That's the value that I think has to come into insurance for it to keep growing in the way it should. there is the big reinsurers do have a concern that there's a whole generation are running around the world not protected. You know, they're running around London or major cities in the world and they don't have home insurance because they're all in rented properties, and yet they're running around with an average of £2,500 worth of stuff. You know, mobile phones, laptops, your expensive bicycles, and they're not protected. But the reason they're not protected because we're not making it easy enough. We have to make it easier, and we have to use technology and also proprietary data. We have to, you know, there's nothing worse, and I get it still with my bank. They'll send me a great offer for insurance. I'll click a link, I'll go through, and they'll ask me my name and address. I mean, that's not good enough. You know, you've sent me the offer. Don't ask my name again. So that's what I think has to improve.
Yeah, and I think moving forward, some of the companies in the Insurtech space that have tried it have done really good customer experience journeys, but then have fallen down in the claims process because they don't. And that's where the mix between the new and the old maybe should be a wee bit more.
Yeah, I agree, Joanne. There's a lot of Insurtechs, and Trove were one of them. They were very good on tech, less good on insurance and the understanding of insurance. And there was a lot of really cool tech around for the front end, but actually less tech around that affected pricing, that affected claims. You know, so I think the Insurtech has matured enough to realize that actually you mightn't be able to do all of it, you know, and the best system probably has a lot of the best in class that are good at quote to bind, that are good at midterm adjustments, that are good at claims technology, and that relationship back into the underwriter has to be really quick and allow for the use of proprietary data, or we will continue to hit against the same thing where whether you're a commercial customer or a personal customer, you'll get frustrated how long it takes and whether that's a quote or whether that's a claim.
Yeah. So I think moving forward for the industry, it's about using lots of different platforms in a unified approach for everybody for the welfare. And again, on to the Aaron and Anthony, the same for yourselves.
Yeah, for me the answer is collaboration between the
collaboration.
Insurtechs and the insurance companies. The claims bit is not good enough. It's simply not good enough at the minute. You know, we're not back to using faxes, but we are sending emails into big dark holes and they're not being answered for 5 days. And that, you know, I'm not going to single any insurer. There's nobody stands out better than another, okay? And I know this is all to do with pandemic. It's got to do with working from home and all the rest. But why hasn't technology sort of caught that space? You know, that should be making things better. And I know that engineers in the motor side of things, they have great technology. The garages have great technology. But here we are sending emails into a team email and wait for someone to pick it up. So that's the bit. Yeah. It's the collaboration between the Insurtech and the insurers, I think, will be the answer.
I suppose it's opening up the willingness to embrace and not feel like it's a threat.
Absolutely.
You know, that there's room for everybody and it's not a threat to the industry, but it's a chance to collaborate and make a partnership. And what about yourself, Aaron?
No, I have to totally agree with Anthony. I think the collaboration between everybody, the communication lines between everybody, there's, you know, the pandemic, people are working from home, there's excuses for all kinds of things. There's the customer service element isn't really there, and I think it needs to, and I think everybody needs to collaborate better, and I think there's a market for that, and I just think somebody needs to take it, and I think technology probably needs to step up to the mark a little bit more, and bridge that between the underwriters, the clients, and the brokers. So I think there's a huge space there, and I think there's a big opportunity for somebody to step into that market and really make a difference.
Yeah.
And the insurers don't have the staff to do this. They need to go outside, they need to outsource, they need to get out, and the Insurtechs need to be going to the insurance companies and saying, we can do this. And some of the biggest names have done it. You know, they have, we talked about this earlier, different names mentioned that maybe Aviva had bought, AXA had bought. So, you know, it's out there. And
they're trying.
They are trying, and I think they are more open. I think the pandemic, as you say, Aaron, has sped everything up by at least 5 years.
Although, to be controversial for a moment, Trove have worked with many big underwriters across the world, and the moment you mention, you know, does claims friction exist, you'll see a lot of people dive for cover. You know, there's a lot of B2C products in the Insurtech world, including Trove's, that there is a feeling with the underwriter, if you make it too easy to claim, you know, do you open yourself up for fraud? You know, and that's not in the motor world, because we know the motor world is very claims are very intricate, but in some of the personal line stuff like gadget insurance, mobile phone insurance, the combined ratios are so poor, a lot of it is because maybe it's too easy to claim. You know, maybe you have to make it difficult to claim. And one of a lot of things that Trove and companies like us are investing in is fraud technology. You know, how do you stop people ruining it for everyone else? Because the technology is there, but in some lines of business, there has to be some gates to jump through, or else ultimately everyone else will pay. Because if it's too easy to claim on some of those small claims, then ultimately the premiums will end up going up. You know, so, and big carriers don't like to talk about claims friction, but we think it exists.
Yeah, absolutely. Ed, I'm going to move just out to the audience now and see, do we have any questions? There's a few come in from social media. Has anybody here any questions they'd like to ask the panellists? There's one down the back.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Just a quick question about how the pandemic has affected the broker industry. Has it been a positive for it or negative?
Well, to be honest, I'd said to somebody last week that we enacted our business continuity plan, and it used to be a thing that you talked about, and you looked at, and why are we updating this thing? Because I'm never going to need it. And of course, fires and disasters happen. But it did happen, and about the 20th of March last year, we had to decant everybody home, and we had to say, look, thankfully our system was on the cloud. We did that. It seemed a very painful move the year before, but it was so painless when we moved out. Now, it was very funny. We were running around Tesco looking for small mobile phones to give to our staff so that they had something to use for a couple of days. But you know what, it worked. We then got the phone technology going, and yeah, we were fit to keep the thing going. And thankfully, look, it wasn't without its pain. There are businesses that suffered, drastically in it, and but we've come out the other side of it, and that's good.
For me, we were already set up to be able to work from home, and it was good. But again, a lot of people didn't know what Zoom was, or didn't know what video conferencing was. So it brought technology forward, I would say, by about 5 years. And I think there was an acceptance now of technology. There's an acceptance of online portal. There's acceptance of doing business digitally. As where before it, there wasn't. And I also think from a broker point of view, it actually got people thinking about risk. So customers started thinking about risk. They started thinking about different types of insurance. What do I need? How do I need to be insured? Am I insured enough? So I think from a broker perspective, there's been huge opportunities as well as a bit of disruption. But look, it's happened, and we're here now. And look, I think that's what's important.
And I've seen a lot of kitchens and spare rooms. Can't believe half of it. Yeah.
Well, anecdotally, I can tell you at one stage last March, I know a major global broker in London were running around looking for 4,500 laptops because many of their staff were working on what you would call dummy terminals connected to the. So, I'm not sure if they bought them all, but they were at one stage taking them off all the salespeople to give to the claims handlers or to the relationship managers. So, I'm sure they'll not get caught out like that again.
Thank you very much, guys. Great answers. Anybody else?
Hi, just a question. You touched on AI earlier. I think you said AI was overrated in its impact on insurance to date. What do you see as the potential impact for AI and machine learning on insurance, particularly in claims going forward?
Well, I'll give you my perspective on it. I think especially in claims, I think it will play a more important part, especially in commercial auto, which there's technology out there now that can rebuild a claim in real time using Google Maps, for example. So I think anything that speeds it up. The future also looks, if you think that we touched on Amazon this morning, Amazon have talked about insurance for a long time. And in fact, we've been in the room with them on multiple occasions when at start they were talking about doing their own branded insurance. Then they talked about doing an aggregator. And the reason being is they don't like to share data. You know, they control the point of market consideration, not just the point of market sale. And if they're going to do it, they could place themselves in a very strong position because they know what behaviors we have. And that's where moving through the world, being automatically protected, the likes of Amazon could do it. So they know when you're in an airport, they know when you're in your kitchen, they know when you're in your car. And then artificial intelligence could play a massive role in just protecting you as you move through your life. There is enough data out there at the moment, but what you would need to have is collaboration, as the guys said, between multiple insurers, multiple brokers, and I don't think we're quite there yet. You know, there's still an element of competition, and so there should be, because the consumer needs to feel as if they're getting and whether that's a business consumer or a personal lines consumer, they need to feel as if they're getting a competitive edge in the market. And so that's where I see it. I see it'll play more of a role, but maybe in certain parts of the insurance value chain.
Yeah, I agree, and it's the claims bit for me. It's the large fleet, the haulage fleet. You know, that anything that can speed that process up. We see it out here every day when we drive in 4 lanes, 3 lanes, and people shooting up the inside. And I definitely wasn't wrong, and she definitely was. You know, she wasn't wrong either. Somebody has to be to blame, and anything that can speed that up, and AI can do that, then let bring it on. But collaboration.
In terms of actually buying a policy or doing something online, I don't think that it's had the effect that everybody thought it would. I think people were talking about robo-advice. They thought that it would revolutionise the insurance market, and it really hasn't. It hasn't had the same effect as everybody thought it would. So I agree with the guys in terms of claims, possibly, but at the front end, I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's harder at that.
Commercial end.
You still need the person there to deal with that, absolutely. Any other questions on the floor? No, there were a few that did come in just on social media. So I suppose we've talked about it already, but how can the brokers, Aaron and Anthony, provide a good mix between digital technology and still remain current with that human presence?
But I think that's already happening. You know,
Yeah.
I think you can only get to a certain point. You need to have the human interaction. You know, is this the right thing for me? Are you sure I'm covered? Because ultimately, when it comes to a claim, you know, who then takes the blame for it? Is it, you know, the digitisation of it? You know, so I think the journey through a portal is the right way to go. But I think ultimately, at the last second, then people want advice.
Yeah, and I think just from being around the broker market myself every day, what I have found is that the transparency is a big thing, but also informing the customer on their journey, you know, when they have access to their documents easily, as opposed to sometimes being sent out through email, it gets lost in the email, and they just leave that liability with the broker until something happens, and then I don't know what I had, you know. So being able to inform different ways of communication, ways of communicating with that client. What about yourself, Anthony?
Absolutely, and I think if you take the email scenario, we're sending maybe 15 attachments in that email. There has to be an easier way. The term I use, we have to slick it up. It has to slick up, and the technology's there. Why are we not using it?
And sometimes portals don't really don't really cut it, because clients have it's a hard way of logging in. So it's getting that process that wee bit more. I'm very conscious of time, so I think we're near ready to wrap it up. And I am not going to ask you to give a conclusion of today's events or anything, but I do want a wee bit of prediction for the future. So Ed, what is the future trend you see emerging in the digital insurance space, and where do you see the brokers in this?
So a big thing that Trove are involved in, and many others, is the embedded insurance. So embedding insurance in the journey of a third party, I think, is going to play a big role. So I often use the example of my daughter, who's 13, and I think forward, 6 or 7 years when she might want to purchase insurance. What is Aviva? What is AXA going to mean to her? It's going to mean very little. What does TikTok mean to her? What does Netflix mean to her? So the ability to embed insurance and use proprietary data, big brand scores to purchase insurance, I think, is a big future. The broker world, as I touched on earlier, I think there's a massive opportunity for brokers in the digital space in the future, especially in commercial lines insurance. The guys touched on it earlier. What the pandemic has also done is got people thinking more about cyber, more about specialist cover, more about goods in fleet, goods in transit cover. All of these business, lots and lots of different types. And if you're a fleet owner or one of these modern connected fleet owners, to go out and try and buy that yourself direct, it's a very difficult process. Not just the purchase, but actually the management, midterm adjustments, claims technology, and I think the brokers have a massive, massive role to play in that. And as the guys said, but the brokers themselves also have to digitalize more. And that doesn't mean you lose contact with your customers, but actually looking at the technology, things like BrokerIQ, the technology out there to make the process better for both ends of the scale. That's where I see it going.
Brilliant, thank you, Ed. And just over to Aaron and Anthony, what are we going to be talking about in relation to digitisation within the broker market in 5 years' time?
For me, maybe selfish a bit,